Okay, so here is this is a little bit further down in the pipeline. We're gonna backtrack after you see this. Now, a lot of this one, if we look at the source clip here, you can see in this case he's holding a rag in this hand. He has the dipstick in that hand, and then this guy is very interactive with his glasses. He's switching hands. He's moving around, and then right here, he's like flicking them back and forth. If you watch his thumb here, how he's like rolling his thumb from one side of the uh, arm of the glasses to the other side and tipping them around. And Steve Martin has changed hands with the dipstick at some point. I don't believe they show him actually changing hands. He just has it, and then all of a sudden, probably about here, he's swapping it. There it is. Okay. So here is where this is at. It's nowhere near being completed, but you can see where this is going.
Looks good to me, sir, but I'd like your opinion. Damn these glasses. Well, it looks good to me, too. Hurry up, son. Time's wasted. I'm going to the John. Don't forget to check those tires. Damn these glasses, son. Yes, sir. I damn thee.
So most of the animation is actually on this guy. He has most of the work done on him. If you look at even the source video, Steve Martin just kind of standing here a little bit, and then he does one of those numbers at the end. Okay, so the trickiest thing here is getting him to interact with these glasses. Okay, and I'm going to actually step aside and show that in a little bit. But you can see there's actually some areas, like right about here, where his hand actually goes through the glasses there. And then there's another part shortly up here. Oops, it's back here a little bit. There it is. Right here, the glasses kind of freak out a little bit. And again, you can see his hand is through his glasses. Okay. Now this is all stuff that has to be finessed and tweaked and whatever else. So I'm just going to jump over to this other scene that I have, which is just a grabbing scene. And it's just to get you to understand how to get a character to actually pick something up. So I'm just going to put Andy's arms down. Now, understanding the mechanics of movement is kind of critical to this whole process of animating, okay? One of the things I want to emphasize is that when he's picking up the can, he simply doesn't take his hand and put it about here, okay? Obviously, this looks very, very awkward, all right? His arm is actually stretched because stretch is on right now, okay? But whenever we're moving something, our hand may be what we're doing, we're moving our hand, but that motion echoes back into the elbow, it echoes back into the shoulder, it echoes back into the collarbone, it echoes into the neck, into the spine, all the way down to the hips, and even the feet are typically affected to some point when we start to grab something. Now, obviously, there's cases where we can keep our body perfectly still and reach something, but typically, in order for us to get something that looks convincing, we have to kind of do a lot more than simply move the hand. Okay, so in this case, I'm actually going through and rotating the spine a little bit. It's probably good there. I'll rotate the head back and down. I'll move the hand over. And you can see just this pose here looks much more convincing than the other pose I had a second ago. Okay? Having this here spun around and whatever else, even the hips, we can have a little motion in there. And we could even add maybe a little bit of foot roll. There it is. Just a little bit of foot roll in there, just to kind of bend the leg a little bit. Okay, so you can see how this is going to look much more convincing than someone who's just perfectly straight up and down, reaching out with their hand. Okay, so I'm just going to go to my Andy character set, and I'm just going to set a key here. Okay, this is going to be my first key, is Andy being right here, and then my second key I'll be at 20, and I'm going to have him close his hand around the can. Okay. Now this, again, you have to kind of figure out what the mechanics of this whole thing is, as to what we're moving. I'm actually going to hide some of these elements here. I need my time slider, and I need my channel box. There we go. Okay, I don't really need the rest of it. All right. So now here I have to figure out, when you're grabbing something, how much does each component of your hand move? The base joint moves slightly, at least in my case. So it's like that. Okay. And then the next joints, I'm going to move these together. I think these pretty much move about the same. And I'm going to turn on wireframe also so we can see how this is connecting. Okay, and I think I'm going to pull the hand back a little bit. There you go. The fingers are too far apart, so let me grab my controller and I'll take the spread and bring them in. The nice thing about this rig, again, is that we have individual controls, so if I need to move them here or there or wherever, I could also rotate some of my fingers. Take the middle one in a little bit more, take the ring one in a little bit more. Alright, so that looks good there. I think I want this collarbone down a little bit more too. Make this elbow out. Okay, and then I need to take that thumb and wrap the thumb around. Now again, sometimes these things can be just a little bit tricky, just trying to figure out, where are things supposed to be. And the best reference for it, if you can't see it in your video, is to just do it. Just grab something and look at how your hand is interacting with the object. Okay, watch out for a little intersection there. I'm going to do a little thumb twist. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So now it looks like the hand is actually grabbing that. So again, I'm going to set a key. I'm going to keep it there for like 2 frames. And then I'll go up to frame 40. And we'll take this. We'll pretend she's drinking it. So we'll bring this up to her mouth. And you can see the elbow's doing something funky. I don't care what the elbow's doing because I'm just going to grab this and adjust it. Okay, so I'll set a key, let's say here. Okay, now from this point on, it's going to be a little bit tricky to even see, how far should her hand be up? How close does this thing need to be? Okay, and you'll also notice that this thing didn't go with it. Okay, it just stayed there. Why, if this was the real world, she would have actually grabbed that and lifted it up. Well, in Maya, we have to fake it. Okay, if you're watching any of the old Muppet movies, whenever the characters grab something, there would actually be like a camera cut. The character would grab it in one scene, they would cut, they would attach it to their hand, and then they would go to a different camera and show them lifting it up. Okay, and if they let go of it, then they would switch cameras again and let go of it. Okay. Also going to look in here and see just how this is approaching it. Okay. I'll use a little in between here just to kind of pull this back. and pull that thumb just around. This is just a that's better. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to have her actually pick this thing up. Okay. Now the way that it works, I'm going to create a locator. And my locators aren't showing, so I have to go to Show Locators. I'm just going to duplicate it, so I have 2 of these. And I'm just going to create a sphere. Okay, just so you can see how the process is going to work. Okay, so this one, I'm just going to label that table. Go to text tool. And this is just so you can see it. You wouldn't actually need to do this for Andy. Table. I'll create another piece. And that's hand. Okay, so we have one locator that's the table, one locator that's the hand. So what we need to do is swap the object to move with each of these. Okay, so right now if I grab this locator and move it, the ball doesn't move. If I grab this locator and move it, the ball doesn't move. If we remember from our rigging stuff that we have some constraints over here that we can have objects move with other objects. Okay, so that's what we're going to use. So I'm going to grab the locator, shift click the ball, and do a parent constraint. Okay, I'm going to maintain my offset, I'm going to do translates and rotates. Good. So now if I grab the locator and move it, you'll see that the ball does move with the locator. Okay, I didn't grab the ball and the locator, because that would might do something funky. I just grab the locator and move that. So that's what I want to do with the other one too. Okay, so I want it to move with the table, and then at some point I want it to move with the hand. So I'm going to grab the locator, I'm going to shift click the ball, I'm going to do a parent constraint. And now if I grab this, you'll see that it moves with this one, and it moves with that one. Well, that's not what I want. I don't want it to move with both. I want it to move with one at a time. Like first the table, and then the hand, and then if she sets it back down on the table, then the table again. Okay? So if I click on the ball, you'll notice that we have this P sphere parent constraint 1. And we have a locator 4, which is this guy, locator 4. And we also have a locator 5, which is this guy, locator 5. So if I take these and I swap between them, okay, at this point I say this is 0 for locator 5, you'll see that locator 5 now has no influence over that ball. And if I swap back here and click this, you'll see that it has full influence on this one. And again, if these are both on, what it's going to do is it's taking the average. So as I move this one up, you see this is at 0. As I move this up to, let's say, 12, you'll see that it's halfway in the y direction between this one and that one. Okay, so it's at about 6, which is half of 12. But as I go through and I take the weight off of that one, that has no effect, and this one is going to have full effect. So this is at 12.6, this is at 12.6. Okay, so here's where the magic comes in, is that I can swap between these two. So now that I've swapped it, and I've said that locator 5 is going to have all the weighting, and locator 4 is going to have 0 of the weighting, now you see that I can move this thing like that. Okay. Now in order to do the swap here, in order to do the trade-off, I'm just going to undo a couple steps, which is right before I added this locator 5 into the mix. There we go. Okay, so locator 5 is gone. This is no longer affecting it. That's what I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a little animation on here. Let me go and add. Every time I think I'm done with something, I have to add something else. There we go. So I'm going to add this in here and just take this back to none just for a second. So I'm going to take this locator, and I'm just going to set a key here. Okay, I'm going to delete it so I don't care about keeping my keyframes clean. I'm going to go up to frame 20. I'm going to animate this locator jumping over here. it is. I'm going to set a key. I'm going to go to frame 40, 1, whatever. Move it back and set another key. Okay. So right now this table 1 moves over here, and then it moves right back. Okay. So I want the ball to stay on the hand 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to that keyframe at 20. I'm going to click the ball, and I'm going to need my outliner for this. Okay, so here's locator 5. That's the table, the hand 1. I can even label it hand. I'll label this one table. So I'm going to click on the hand, control click the sphere, and do a constrained parent on it. Okay, same options. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to animate these. Okay, so right now if we were just to look at the animation before I go further, you'll see that this is kind of taking basically the average of all this stuff. Okay, we don't want that. We want it to do fully on the locator, which after, just as a point of interest, after you rename it here, it won't update here automatically. Okay, so just keep in mind you want to label everything beforehand. So I'm going to set my locator for the table to 1, my hand locator to 0, and I'm just going to right click and key those. Okay, then I'm going to go up a single frame and swap them. So I'm going to say locator 4 is at 0, the hand 1 is at 1, key it. Okay, so now if I rewind it and play, you'll see that we've done the swap. Okay, and all we're doing is we're animating a parent constraint. Right now at the beginning of this, the ball is constrained to the first locator. Once it hits frame 20, it swaps and now it's constrained to the second locator. Okay, so this can get very tricky because as we swap from one thing to another thing to another thing, we have to add more and more locators. Okay, now where it becomes an issue in my animation was that trying to get these things back aligned. Here it's no big deal because everything just snaps right to where it needs to be. But in certain cases it's not going to, and we'll see that. Okay, so I'm going to keep this off to the side. I'll even throw it on a layer so I can hide it. There we go. Okay, so now we need to do this in here. Let me actually just group these things so I can don't get confused. Alright, so we have, there is our can, which I'll label can. And so now we want to do that same swap on Andy. Okay. Now I don't need to use locators, but locators are very handy to use, so that's why we use them. I'm going to create a locator, and I'm just going to snap it over here. And just pull it down there. Okay. So that's where it's going to be located on the table. So I'm going to freeze the transforms on this just to keep it nice and clean. I'm going to label it. And there it is. So I'm going to grab the can. Oops, sorry. I'm going to grab the locator first. Shift click the can and constrain parent. There it is. Add. Okay. So then what I'm going to do, right now it's still doing nothing. The can's just stuck to the table still. I'm going to create another locator. This one is going to be attached to Andy's hand. Okay, so right here in his hand, I need to create a locator. So I made a locator. It's right there. So I'm just going to move it over here. I'm going to use my snapping tools. So I hold down V and just middle mouse button click and drag around here until I get it about in his hand. Okay, now it's not going to matter so much where it is in his hand as long as it's in his hand. Okay, it even works if it's way out here. It just makes more sense to be inside his hand. So we're going to label it hand locator. I'm going to show my joints. Show joints. Okay, because I have to have this locator move with my hand. All right. So what I like to do is just parent it. So I'm just going to click the locator, shift click my wrist joint, and parent it. I don't want to parent it to a finger joint. That wouldn't make sense because then as that finger rotates, then that locator is going to rotate. Okay, this locator is going to move with the wrist. That'd be hard to see. You can see it's moving with the wrist right there. That's what we want. Okay, So now we have a locator here. Good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the locator and I'm going to freeze the transforms on this one. There we go. And if we look at it, same animation still. There's nothing changed as far as the animation. We just have the setup done. Okay. So now we have to do the swap. So at frame 20, we need to do the swap. So I'm going to click on here, and you'll see that we just have the table locator loaded. So I'm going to make my new locator, which is the hand one. Shift click that, constrain parent, and then I'm just going to put the hand locator to 0 and the table locator to 1, set a key, go to the next frame, and swap them. Okay, so at frame 20, this table locator was 1, the hand locator was 0. At frame 21, the table locator was 0, the hand locator was 1. So now we should get, if we rewind this and hit play, you can see that Andy now picks up the can. And his elbow looks weird. I'm just going to fix that. Not that it matters, but it's going to bother me. And then the shoulder doesn't need to be down so much. And then these rotates really need to be there. It's too much. So this is where we love having these things just zero outable. You can bring this up to Andy's mouth. See, now that we have the cannon there, we can really see where this is going to be hitting. I think this probably needs to be rotated like that. There we go. Okay, I'll just set a key there just for fun. I'm going to turn my wireframe off just so I can see what this looks like. He grabs the can and puts it up to his mouth. Okay. Alright, so now let's say we wanted Andy to set it down. We can do the chug back or whatever. We can add that in if we wanted to. But let's say we want him to set it down. So I'm just going to add a little bit of time here. Let's say 20 frames where he just kind of stays there. And this is if I'm animating this thing and I have him go back and drink this thing. I want to leave that time there. But right now I'm just focusing on getting my canister in hand. Okay, so I leave this kind of 20 frame chunk right in here that I could play with later. Okay, so now let's get Andy to set it back down. Okay, and we're gonna have him set it down on let's pretend we have a shelf. And our shelf looks exactly like our table. There you go. Okay, so we have Andy set this thing back down here, so we're going to go to frame 80. And let's see, it's up there. Yep, it's frame 80. And we'll bring his hand back down here. And look at it from the side view so we can be a little more accurate as far as what angle he's hitting it at. And again, I want to emphasize that you want to have a lot of these things in here, okay? So me setting his hand on this ledge first is probably the wrong way to do that. Actually, it is the wrong way to do that. What we want to do is rotate the spine, how that movement would all happen. Okay, so I'm rotating the spine a little bit. Then I can move the hand back in position. You might be thinking, well, can't you just zero the hand out? Well, no, look at the rotations here. The rotations are really far away from 0 because we're kind of at this weird angle to get them to set this down. Okay, we'll take the collarbone, lower that one. Okay. All right, so there's Andy setting it down at frame 80. We'll set a key. Okay, and then we'll come back to, say, 82, set another key. I like to have this little 2-frame buffer just to kind of have, something to play with. As far as, it's not just like setting it down, letting it go. He's setting it down, opening his grip, and then letting it go. Okay, so then I'm going to come to frame 100, and I'll just pull his hand back to his side. There it is. I'll rotate all these back to 0. Rotate the head back, rotate the hips back, foot down. Demon eyes. Come on. There you go. Rotate the clavicle back. And the hand needs to just come up just a tiny bit. Alright, that should be good. I'll just set a key there. Okay, so there he is. Drink. Set it down. Whoops. Sticky hands, Andy. Okay, so now if we look at this, I do have a locator right here. Okay, now I could swap between this one and that one, but if we look at this, just to preview it before you even see what's going to happen, I take this one to 0, this one to 1. You'll see that the bottle actually jumps back over here. Okay, and it's remembering, the reason it's doing that is remembering where this thing was. When this was locked in at 1, it pops it back here. Okay, so I can't simply do that. Now what I could do is I could animate the position of this. I could set a key here. Okay, let's say there at 40. I could set a key here on this one. Okay, it set keys on just my translates for some reason. Come on. Oh, I don't know why. Because I'm in my Andy character set. There we go. So now if I go up to, let's say, 60 even, or I'll do it at 80. Okay, we go back to 80, and I move this so that it's right there, and I set another key. Okay, so now this locator just moved from here to there. Okay, now let's go see what's going to happen if I take this and swap it. Okay, now it's hard to tell what was happening, so let's actually keyframe it and see what's going to happen. So at 80, we're right here. Key. We'll go up a frame, and we'll swap it. Okay. So we can see there is a change here. You see that the can goes from this position to that position. Okay? Because again, the can is just remembering how it was connected to that locator the first time. Okay? So we have to either spend a lot of time kind of getting this thing lined up exactly the way it was before, or this is my preferred method. Let me go and delete that last keyframe I just did. There we go. So now we're still stuck to the hand, yes. Okay, I'm going to delete the keyframes on this. There we go. It's still good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new locator over here. And that's my preferred method for doing this. And the downside is, yes, every time you are swapping, you're going to have a new locator. But as far as the ease of this goes, it's 10 times easier. Okay. And sometimes I'll even label these things as to what I'm doing. Um, can set down locator. And I'll even put a number here, 0, 1. That way, in case he picks up the can again and sets it down, I'll have another one, can set down locator 2. Or I can label it specifically exactly what it is. Because remember, once we get here, these are not going to be labeled. They're going to be labeled what they were when they were connected, not what they are right here. Okay? And then somewhere I found at some point that I could actually go through and change these names, but I forget how I did it. I may have gone through some crazy hierarchy thing here and connected it in at some point. Okay, at some point I was able to figure it out, but it's better off just do it right the first time. Okay, so here's my can set down locator. I'm freezing the transforms. I'm going to shift click the can, constrain parent. Okay, and then I'm just going to grab the can and do the swap. Oops, why isn't it listed? Try that again. Click the can, constrain parent. There it is. I might have missed it. So now I have to make sure this is 0. I'll set my key, and I set it on all of them. That way there's no confusion. I'll set my key on the other one. And now you'll see that between one and the other, there's no shifting in my can. Okay. So now I rewind, I hit play, and there he goes. Okay. And just for fun, you'll see that his fingers are going to go through not only the can, but his fingers also go through that box. Okay. And that's one of the reasons is I didn't open his hand up. All right. And this is why I like to have some spacing here, because I can grab this, I can reset these. That. I'm also going to pull his hand. So it's coming straight back. I'm going to just pull it off to the side and then go back. Oops, and of course I didn't set a key on the correct thing, because I didn't have my Andy character set up. And that will happen. At some point you'll go through and spend 2 minutes setting up a pose, then you'll hit S and realize, whoops, I didn't set my key. There we go. So always make sure you're on that character set. And then we'll even come back here and reset these so it doesn't go back into his fist. There you go. All right, so there he is. And just to kind of finish it off, I could go into that time in between here. And let's say it takes him 7 frames to chug back. I'm rotating these back, and I'm also going to rotate them, not them, this one, upwards. And a little more arch in the back. That'll be good. Shove it into his face. Maybe rotate the neck a little bit. Okay, you can see how this is all about poses. That's what we're doing. We do those 3 poses initially, and now we're just setting up more poses as we're going. Okay, so I'll set a key here. I'm going to middle drag up to like 51 and set a key. Okay, That way what I have is I have a little bit of time where Andy's, still in this position. Alright, so now, let's set it back down. So grab it, drink, set it back down. Okay? Now if this is too much, watch what's going to happen here. Is that I say, okay, well that's obviously too quick. I'm just going to move these. And then we'll see what shenanigans happen. Whoops. You see how the can jumped out of Andy's hand. Okay? And the reason for that is because we didn't set up this on our character set. Okay, so these attributes don't lie in the character set, so as I'm adjusting Andy's movement, I'm not adjusting the movement or the transition of this. So then I would have to go through and adjust that and say, okay, well, where is this happening? Let me go to my graph editor, or even tracks editor, not tracks, dope sheet. Okay, there are the keyframes set right here. And I could say, okay, at what point does Andy's hand actually get there? Right about 102. So I can grab these and just slide them down to 102. Okay, and now that transition is going to happen down here. So now we've just adjusted it. There we go. And of course, just to kind of put some icing on the cake, I'm going to go to his head character set and turn on his facial controls. Face controls. That's good. Okay. So Andy comes up to take his drink. I want him to blink. Okay, so I'm just going to delete the keyframes for this specific one. So right here, they're good. Right at 69, they're good. But then in the middle here, there, there we go. Okay. All right, and I could even animate, obviously, the mouth opening for the drink too. I could do that as well. Okay, and the reason I'm deleting these frames is because I don't want to have to deal with all those extra keyframes in there when I don't really need them. Okay, so I'm going here to this keyframe. Actually, let me undo that. Go back a little bit. Then grab that and set a keyframe. And then by the time the can actually gets there, I'm going to have the mouth open slightly. And I could, there was one in here I thought. It was like puckering. I think it might be on the actual face. Well, that's good enough for this. Alright, so let me key that. Go up and drink. I'll set a key here. Come up a little bit further. And then just reset the keys to 0. Okay. Now again, this is just adding to that level of animation that we have on here. Okay, so here we go. Wonderful. Alright, so let me save this scene as, grabbing 01. Alright, so now that was the first part of this, which is grabbing that thing. Okay, now sometimes we actually have, let's say, a bar that we want Andy to grab. And move the bar, okay? So I'm just going to hide this stuff that's here. And then we're at, let's say, 140. So I'm just going to scoot this up to 140. Okay. Now I want Andy to grab this bar and move the bar. What are these? Oh, those are knee controls. Alright, let's go to display my UI elements, status line. My snap will stuck on. So as I just I'm creepily adding this stuff back in. Alright, so now there's, let me just save this and then go to the Andy rig again, just so you can see some of this stuff that's on here. Okay, right now if I were to grab his hips and I move his hips, oops, you'll see how his hands are moving with him. Okay, but what if we had a bar right here, and Andy is going to grab onto that bar. So we'll just slide him over. Okay, see how his hands are still moving with it. Eventually, we want these hands to not move with the body. I want to be able to have Andy grab onto this bar and not have to worry about, I want his body to move independently. Like he's grabbing on and the bar is basically going to be where his hands are moving. On the Andy rig, and I'm not sure about every single rig that's out there, but on the Andy rig, on his hands here, there's actually a parent. And we can change what he's parented to. So this is the default, is spine and shoulders. Okay? If we change it to Andy World, you'll see that his hand goes up here. If I grab this one, and oops, this one. I can change this one to Andy World. Both hands go up. Simple. Grab them, pull them back down. Okay. Now his hands are about in the same position. But here's where the cool part is that now his hands are like stuck to that bar. Okay, or they're just stuck in the air. Okay, the hips are not affecting Andy's movement anymore. So if Andy was to do push-ups, you can see how he can do push-ups. If Andy's grabbing this bar and doing whatever, ballet or something, you can see how that's no longer affecting his movement. Okay, but his hands are still not moving with the bar. Okay, so at this point, what I could do is I could constrain these guys, just like I did with the can setup. I'm not going to do the whole making them into fists. You get the idea that we want them into fists. But I'm going to constrain his hands to this bar. So I'm going to grab the bar, shift click one of these, and do a constrain parent. Okay, I don't need locators for this. Constrain parent. Okay, and then just for one relief, I'm just going to pop these elbows so that they're outward. Okay, so now that I've constrained his hands to the bar, if I were to grab the bar and move it, you can see how both of his hands are moving. Okay, and even rotating. So if Andy had, let's say, a gun, and we wanted the gun to move with him, we could do that very easily. Okay, and you can see how his hands are moving perfectly like this. Now we lose the ability to be able to grab his hands and still animate afterwards. If I grab it like this and then I go back and move this, you'll see how his hand is going to pop back to that thing. Okay, so we lose that ability. Now there's another way that we can kind of do some of this stuff too. Should be back. Nope, still there. There we go. Okay. Whoa. What happened, Andy? Let's go back to where you were. So let's say this is a smaller device, something like this, and we want Andy to be able to grab it and move certain things around with it. Okay. If I go to the joint tool, and this is just a little bit of rigging that we have to do for it, but it's not a big deal. I'm going to snap a joint holding V, snap a joint here, still holding V, snap a joint there. Now my joints are off, so I'm going to go to show joints so I can see them. Hit enter. There we go. Okay. So now you can see if I make my joints a little bit bigger, you can see the joint inside here. Okay. So then what I can do is I can go to skeleton, go to IK handle tool. I'm going to click on a point here, click on a point there. Okay, now you can see I can move this joint around with that IK. So I'm going to parent this cylinder to that joint. And now if I grab the IK, very careful I grab the IK. It's kind of like hidden amongst joints. Maybe I have IKs turned off also. Show IK, there we go. Alright, so now if I grab this IK and move it, you can see how we're moving that thing. So what I can do is take this IK handle, shift click this thing, and I can parent it to it, or I can grab this, shift click the IK, the opposite order, and do a constrain parent. That works too. And I can grab this, shift click the joint, do a constrain parent. There we go. Okay, so now if I grab this, okay, right now the hand's still stuck to the bar, but if I wanted to move the bar, I can independently grab this hand and move it up or down. Okay, now you'll see the disadvantage is that this one isn't really moving with it, but if I grab this and move it, you'll see that it's going to move that too. Okay, so I do get, if he's sawing, okay, that could be a really quick rig, just so you don't have to keep animating that kind of thing happening over and over and over again, or trying to fit it in there. Okay, so that's another way that you can kind of set things up, is by creating these little mini rigs and then constraining stuff to that as well. Okay, so everything's going to be the same that we did for this other stuff on the first grabbing one, which is we would have to make sure that we did parent constraints and label things correctly and swap them on and off and whatever else. Okay, let me reopen my Andy rig. Okay, now I'm going to make one more note on here. If we're doing a lip syncing, actually let me go to my OptiGrab one. Alright, let's go here. I'm just going to switch to the end.
Yes, sir. I damn thee.
Okay, now he's obviously not very full on yet. Let's go here. Okay, now anytime you do lip syncing, you want to be kind of focused on the character. You want to be able to see what their face is doing so you can get your character's face into that pose. So I'm going to jump to frame 300, which is before he says it.
Sir.
I guess it's right about the time he says it. Alright, that's the first frame we can see. So let's say right about here. Okay, so I'm going to get him into that pose, just because I can't see his face at this frame. I'm going to get his face into that pose at about here. Okay, so of course I need to turn on his face controls. And it might be a little bit hard to work with these because they're kind of like he's rotated or this is rotated or whatever. But we'll do what we can. Okay, and I think a lot of this is I'm going to use the ones on his face and not necessarily these little sliders. Okay, so I'm just going to switch to my head one, and I don't really have a lot of head stuff going in here. If I go to my graph editor. That's not it. And this will automatically show the head stuff that's going on. This is basically his neck, is what we're seeing. So if I click on one of these and I look, this is his neck rotation right there. Go back to the top. All of these ones are actually stuff going on. And this guy here. Okay? And a lot of this is just, like I said, it's like neck rotations. So Andy, neck, 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 neck. Okay? So it's these three, and these two are doing stuff. But these other ones, that one's doing something. Like his eyes aren't doing anything. So I can delete his eyes. These ones up here, all the way to the top. So there's a little bit of movement in some of these. Which ones are these? That's that one. That one. Oh, that's his other neck. Again, nothing up here that's moving, so I can delete those. So this is all just neck controls. Okay, so I'm going to leave the neck controls in here, but I wanted to have some freedom to play with his facial controls. Okay, so now that I have his facial controls, these are all inside of his thing. So if I'm doing the head, I have to make sure that these are all inside there. Oops, that's the wrong one. And you can see they're not, so I want to make sure that I go through, make sure I'm on Andy head, and add these to the character set. Okay, and then because they're all circles, I can just grab them all really. Or I could even go in the outliner and try to find them. Maybe that'll be harder. That will be harder. So how they have it organized. So I'm just going to grab, highlight, and add these into that head character set. Now I could even do a face character set too. That might make things a little bit easier, just kind of isolate face movements from head movements. But in a way, they kind of work together. Okay, so I'm only going to focus on the mouth for this demo, but I'd want to do the entire face. Okay, so even like these guys here, and the eyes and the eyebrows and all of these things I'd want to include in there just so I can capture the whole facial movement. Okay, and facial animation is going to be no different than anything else that we do. Okay. Alright, so right here we're getting him into this pose. So we need to open up his mouth. And his head will be rotated down, but I'm just going to keep it up for now. These things would be up. And I'm at 290, 285, so I'm just going to set a key on these things. Okay? Then I can go, I'll set a key here at 292. Okay, and I'm watching down here, there's green down here, these little bumps and hills. Every time this gets big, that's someone talking or some noise. So if I look at this, and I can make this bigger so you can see it better, is every time I scrub across one of these, 250, right here, this big bump right here is Steve Martin saying yes. Yes, sir. So if I go here and I look at that, I can see he says yes, sir. Okay. Now I want to go back. Let's say here's where he says yes. So I want to put the mouth in a Y formation. Right here. Yes, sir. So his teeth are clenched like this. That's the Y. And then he opens up his mouth slightly. Then he gets his mouth into an S form. Now there's actually, these are called phonemes, and the way I remember how to spell it is you say phone me. Okay. And there are certain mouth shapes that we make when we do certain sounds. Like here is a mouth shape for ah or a, Here's E, here's I, here's O, here's U, fa, whatever. Okay, so you can see all those. Now these are like the basic ones. These go into further ones. Oops, that's someone actually talking. Where we can get into higher res ones. Let me see if there's any images of them. This is a better one, I guess. Okay. There you go. That's the one I was looking for. Okay, so you can see all the different things in here, like how you'd say oi, or ooh, or cute, or whatever you. Okay, so these go into a lot more. Here's another one that's actual human reference. Okay, your best reference though is your own face. Okay, as you're trying to do these things, look at your own face and see what your own face is doing. All right, so basically we're getting the mouth into that y sound for yes sir, and I want to set my key right here is a yeah. Okay, so right here at 292 I set my key for the Y. Here's where the E sound's coming in. Right there at that big peak. So I'm just going to go back another frame. And I'm going to open up his jaw a little bit. Okay, so now if we look at this. Okay, now we're going to get his mouth into the S sound. And the yes, or the S sound, it looks similar to the Y. So let's put this in here. And again, we're going to go back a little bit and set a key. Now these are going to get bunched together. If I zoom in on this area, now we can really see that graph.
Son? Yes, sir.
Okay, so we have yes. Maybe I can move this one over a little bit.
Son? Yes, sir.
Okay, so we have yes. Okay, I'm going to set another key here for S. Okay, now for his mouth is going to be open, but his teeth are not going to be showing. And we'll actually get more of, oops, that kind of facial expression. So we'll set another key here. And then for the R part, make sure you grab just the right stuff here. I'm grabbing the neck on accident. Okay, so now let's see how yes sir looks.
Son? Yes, sir. Son? Yes, sir. I damn thee.
Okay, so now we have that.
Yes, sir.
I think I'm going to cut that one and just scoot it over just a little bit.
Son? Yes, sir. I damn thee.
Sometimes when it happens too quick, we don't really get the idea of what's happening with it. Okay, so we want to go through and understand where those things are happening. And typically, if you know a sound is coming, like right here, and he's going to say "I damn thee," the I part can't happen on the I. It has to happen before the I, like 2 frames before the I, 1 frame before the I. Okay, so I typically start off at 2, and then sometimes I'll move it up to 1. So I'm going to go to 318 and get the I in there. Okay, but first I have to go back to like 315 and just set a key, because this is where I want him to be at this point. And then he opens his mouth at 318 to do the I. So we're again opening the chin. These ones are too close in. Let's go back. There we go. I'll set a key there. And then the yi of IE. right there is more of like a teeth clenching one. So let me grab that, scoot it up. We'll scoot these down. Right there, that's a yee. Let me see what these guys do. Oh, that's his tongue. Alright, so we'll set a key there for that.
Yes, sir. I damn.
Okay, now again we'll get to the eye. And then we'll get his mouth back to a regular form. So we'll just kind of hold these up. And I could even do this where I just go through and kind of zero these things out and get them back to a relaxed pose. Not that it's relaxed, but we would have basically just like a default posture. Still these guys here. Let's see.
Sir, I damn thee.
Okay, this one for the dam, I think we're at a little bit more toothy. And here's the part where the mouth is going to be open. So here, that's our. Okay. And then the part, he's going to have his mouth closed. We'll take these, push this down, take the chin one, push it up, and that might work there. And pushing his whole mouth upwards might emphasize that part. And here's the V part where the tongue would be coming out. So again, we'll open up the mouth a little bit. That. And we can use our tongue controls. Oops, let me grab this whole thing here. Lower that back down to 0. And I believe he has a tongue right there. There it is. And just where it's sticking out at. Alright. Keep it inside, Andy. There we go. Okay. Now let's take this and close the mouth a little bit. Alright, we'll set a key there. I want to make sure, too, that this guy, he is on there again. And those guys are on there, too. So so his mouth is going to come back. And his tongue is going to be reset. And these are going to be open. Chin is going to come down. Oops, not that far. Lips are going to come down. That's what I wanted. I'm going to set another key here, and then go back to standard pose. Now, if I go to one of my poses that are already standard, like I know this is my standard pose, I can just middle click out here and just hit S. Now we'll go to that pose at the end. Okay, so now let's see what his face looks like.
These glasses, son. Yes, sir. I damn thee. These glasses, son. Yes, sir. I damn thee.
Okay, and then adding in things like the eyebrows. Oops, that one. Like that. Would help. Also maybe adding in these guys here. Could help as well. We don't want him to look obviously too mean. I think the guy is just, you know, he's a jerk. So we want to keep it lighthearted. But not too lighthearted. Something like that. Okay.
These glasses, son. Yes, sir. I damn thee.
Okay, so that would be the whole process for doing a lip syncing, is just that whole setup right there. Okay, now it becomes very important that whatever sampling we were doing here, whatever resolution as far as frames per second, right here, 24 frames per second, that it's very important that this is matching to that. Okay, if we were to take this into After Effects and we did this at 30 frames per second and our audio is at 24 frames per second, there's no way this would line up. Okay, and it would take a lot of messing with to get it to work correctly. So you really have to make sure that all these things are correct before you begin any type of lip syncing. Okay, and for a piece like this to get it fully complete, you definitely need the lip syncing on there, and you definitely need to have some sort of facial animation that's following it too. Okay. You can even see how wide and open his mouth is in some of these poses. Okay, and how we can really push that even further than what we did to really emphasize these things. You can also see how he's leaning back more, and his chin is kind of tucked in more. If I go to, that's frame 323. Okay, you can see how far we didn't really go with this, where we really could have gone further. Okay, I just like to use my own my own face as a reference, just because I can kind of adjust what it's going to look like. So that's more of like kind of what his mouth is doing. Okay, but obviously he's looking down, and this is down like this, and his shoulders are a little bit down as well. And at that frame, he's getting ready to start pointing. Okay. All right. So that's the lip syncing part. Obviously, you can watch 7 hours of me lip syncing, but it's not going to help you do it. Just getting in there and starting to play with it and experimenting is really what's going to help you get the finessing. Okay. I gave you the gist of what is entailed in there, and then the rest of it is just you doing it. Okay. All right.